Scoro. We have a 30% chance of rain through Saturday. Today's high should be up around 95 degrees. An overnight low, 75. Then on Saturday, highs of 93. Currently, it's 84 degrees in Fort Worth. We have 88 in Dallas, 94 in Wichita Falls, 85 in Tyler.
Welcome back. When I worked here the first time, way back decades and decades ago, I inherited the morning show from the station's original program director, Tony Garrett. This was pre-morning edition. The morning show, it was all local. It was called The Morning Magazine. Tony did a lot of great things. He hired me, for example. But one of the smartest things he ever did was hiring his buddy from Channel 4, Norm Hitzges, when Channel 4 was dumb enough to fire him as a sportscaster. It was a one-shot deal. Tony said, come by Friday morning, do some sports. Norm, stop the presses, was good. Tony said, come back next Friday. By the time I took over the morning show, it was the Friday Morning Sports Spectacular or the weekly meeting of the I Am Not a Jock Club. Take your pick. It later moved to Saturday. I wound up sharing straight man duties with Peter Lesser and David Johnson, Dennis Furlong, and some other guys. But Norm was the constant. You think you're dedicated to your job? Norm did 15 years plus without missing a Friday or Saturday, including 90 minutes on a payphone at the end of a pier on some tiny Caribbean island while he was on his honeymoon. That's entertainment. All of that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. I just like telling the story because this guy who grew up in Dunkirk, New York, who moved to Texas, he lived for a year in Alpine on purpose, who at least when we ran together thought the best road trip around was Louisiana Downs and Shreveport with a stop at Johnny Casey's in Longview on the way home. This guy has turned into a connoisseur of travel. So I'm over at his place a couple of weeks ago, and he starts talking about the pleasures of travel and the reasons Americans don't avail themselves of it and why they don't know how to find a good bargain and their misapprehension about what people in other countries think about us and the uplifting sense of going someplace and doing something you've never done before. And we looked at each other and we thought the same thing. Talk show. And here we are. Norm Hitzges, after being made famous by KERA, left Dallas, but not KERA, and there's some funny stories attached to that, too. He worked for Newsweek Broadcasting New York City. He was sports director at KABC Television in Los Angeles, and then came back where he belonged. For 15 years, he did a sports show on Cliff, the first morning drive sports talk show on any major market station in the country, by the way, before moving either upstairs or downstairs, I can't keep this building straight, to the Ticket, where he's been for about 5 years now. He's heard every day from 10 until noon. But today, he's with us, and we're talking about travel. It is so nice to see you again.
It just seems like yesterday that I really did take the only phone available at a place called the Moorings, literally out on the dock area at the Moorings in Virgin Gorda. And people kept coming up to me and looking at me like, when are you going to be finished? And I couldn't tell them, it'll be about an hour and a half. And they kept hearing things about the Texas Rangers and the Cowboys, and I don't think they could understand what was happening. And by the way, as a note of thanks to KERA, August 10th of 1975 was the day that Tony Garrett put me on the air. It will be 30 years continuously on radio this August 10th. We're about 3.5 weeks away from 30 years.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. And thanks for being an incredible friend for 3 decades now.
My pleasure. So where have you been?
About 12 to 14 years ago, I've always liked to travel the United States. I realized that people take vacations and don't go anywhere. I don't really understand that. I understand when you have family and things like that. But often I'll ask people, where are you going on your vacation? They'll say, nowhere. And I'll say, well, why are you taking vacation then? Why don't you stay and work? So I started a plan about 12, 14 years ago to take 2 trips a year. And in the last decade and a half or so, I've been to Australia, New Zealand 6 times, Costa Rica, Bolivia, Peru, the Amazon fishing, where I'll be going back in 3 weeks, Switzerland, England, Africa 3 times, and that includes South Africa, Botswana, the sadness of Zimbabwe, as they call it there, Tanzania.
Do they really?
Yes, Tanzania.
Okay.
And Zanzibar.
Okay. I don't imagine you growing up in Dunkirk, New York, with the restless urge. Why do you think it came on you 10 or 12 years ago?
I don't know. Maybe it was the fact that I used to love to get travel magazines or watch travel stories or things on television like that. But I suddenly asked myself, why aren't you there? Why aren't you there? You've got a limited amount of time on the face of the earth. Why aren't you there?
Mm-hmm. What pleasure do you derive from travel?
Oh, my. First of all, seeing places that are extraordinarily beautiful. Secondly, learning about people. Going other places and learning about people is just wonderful. You'd be amazed how friendly the world is right now. As all these people with their stiffened shirts from way too much starch and their big, wonderful dioceses that they stand in front of when they proclaim to the microphones their relations with other countries, forget those people. The people you see traveling are just like you and me. They worry about their health and their family. They worry about their money. They worry about safety. They worry about children. And they worry about the world going to hell. All of them. All of them have the same worries. No matter what country they're in, they worry about that.
Norm Hitzges, my guest. We're talking about the pleasures of travel. You want to talk with us? We're at 800-933-5372. We're at the Dallas Public Library downtown. We have a microphone if you want to ask a question. Why New Zealand? Why is it your favorite place on earth?
About 12, 13 years ago, I could only take my vacations in, try to understand that, I could only take my vacations in the southern hemisphere because of the ratings that we get into in commercial radio. You can't go in the fall. You just can't go in the fall because that's cowboy season.
Right.
And now, you can go in the summer, but that's winter in the south, but I was doing baseball at that time. So I couldn't go during baseball season. So you take out cowboy season and baseball season, that leaves you February.
Right.
Literally, it leaves you February when you think about it. Training camp starts in March.
Right.
Baseball segues into football. Football segues into late January at the Super Bowl, and you've got a month before you got to be back at training camp. So I had to look for someplace in the southern hemisphere. And the choices boiled down to Africa, which I am ashamed to say I was afraid of at the time. Australia, which is too big. It's too big. Unless you have a chance to go to Australia 4 or 5 times for a 2-week period. I don't mean to turn you away from Australia, okay? It's just that it was tough to get a handle on. I'm saying, like, you've got 2 weeks to go to the United States. Where are you going? Oh, geez. Oh, geez. So I chose New Zealand, which is the size of California with the population of San Francisco. Picture California. You run everybody out but the people in San Francisco, and then you tell those people, spread out and fill the place up. It has, counting sheep and goats and deer and beef, all of which they raise commercially. You count all those, and humans represent about 5% of the living things on New Zealand. The last count I got in New Zealand was there's 21 sheep for every human being. It is an extraordinary place. It is so beautiful. We have beautiful places in America, but you have to go from one place to another to get to them. For instance, the Grand Canyon is beautiful, and it's a gorgeous place, and Yellowstone's beautiful, but there's a drive there. The South Island of New Zealand is extraordinary. It's got 19 peaks of 10,000 feet or more. It's got living, moving, huge glaciers. It's got snowfields year-round. It's got raging rivers. It's got phenomenal sand coral reefs. It's got wooded areas that you wouldn't believe. It's got rainforests. It's just a remarkable place. And it's so small that if you spent 2 weeks on the South Island of New Zealand, you could literally go entirely around the island, that South Island. And the people are just extraordinary.
Norm Hitzges, my guest. The pleasures of travel is what we're talking about today. If you want to talk with us, 800-933-5372. So why did you get over your qualms about going to Africa?
I suddenly realized that I was getting older, and I hadn't seen much of the world. I don't care what age you are. Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you your age in the front row. You're probably at least with me. In 4 years, you'll be 90. God bless you. That means if you live to 115 and you take 2 trips a year, you got 38 trips left. I suddenly realized I hadn't seen much of the world. The parts I'd seen, I loved. I went to England and I thought, wow, this is a fascinating place. And I went to Paris, and I thought, this was a fascinating place. And then you I love to just grab maps of the world and say, wouldn't it be great to go there?
Mm-hmm. Again, if you want to talk with us, we're at 800-933-5372, or just raise your hand in the auditorium here. Hi there.
Hi, I'd like to find out what your top 5 picks would be if you had 5 places to go, and can you comment on shoulder seasons, which seem to be changing?
I'm sorry, the last word was?
Shoulder seasons?
I don't know the term.
I don't either.
Traveling in the spring and the fall, but it seems like people are kind of expanding their time with travel.
Oh.
There are still prime seasons for traveling in places, and the rates are better out of season. And I would always suggest that. We'll talk money later. My favorite places. It depends on what you want, but I'll tick off my favorite places. In no particular order. I don't want to prejudice you. I'm going to put these in any order. The South Island of New Zealand for beauty is extraordinary. The Serengeti, there may be no better named place in the world. Serengeti translates to endless plains. And you will stand there and you can see 50 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles. The beauty of the Okavango Delta in Botswana. The Okavango Delta is, picture this, because this is a place I'd never heard of. One of my favorite things to do is when I'm having dinner around the world and other people at the table, I'll say, where's your favorite place to go? If you go one place again, where would it be? And the first trip to Africa, I asked this question. The guy said, I'd go to the Okavango Delta. And I said, run that by me again, please. And he said, the Okavango Delta, it's in Botswana. Picture this, an enormous river, 3rd or 4th largest river in Africa, comes flowing out of the Angola highlands, where it's always wet, where you're always going to get rain. It comes roaring into Botswana, which is as flat as the floor in the library. This river then spreads out to the point where in the high water season, it gets up to 120 miles across and forms the largest inland delta in the world. At the high water season, it's about 5,700 square miles. And the water is always between 1 and 4 feet. It's always cold, and it's always got a current. It is not a swamp. Growing in there are papyrus and common reeds, and they will grow 10, 15, 20 feet out of the water. There are channels through the reeds that these natives take. There's a maze of channels. There's thousands of miles of channels. The channels are kept open by now human traffic, and before by elephant traffic. As the elephants would slosh through the delta, they would beat down these trails. You go there, it is unbelievable. You see lions that swim. They like it. You see animals that walk from island to island hunting, and you can go on the island with them, and they're not afraid of you. They're simply not afraid of you. I have pictures standing in a meadow on an island in the Delta with warthogs grazing right around my feet, all around me. They had no fear of human beings. No one's ever fired at them. They've never felt a moment of aggression from a human being.
If you want to talk with us, call us at 800-933-5372, or if you're here at the public library with us downtown, just raise your hand. Norm Hitzges, my guest. When he's working for a living, you hear him on the ticket every day from 10 until noon, but today we have stolen him away, and we're talking about the pleasures of travel. We'll talk about the economics of it and some other things when we come right back.
You've suspected it all along. Life isn't simple. Explore the rich complexity of ideas and cultures in SMU's Master of Liberal Arts program evening graduate courses with an interdisciplinary mix of literature, history, human behavior, and the fine arts. Applications for the fall semester will be accepted through August 1st. Information online at smu.edu/MLA.
I'm Brooke Gladstone. The media crackle with voices, ranging from the sort of sublime.
The question can't be asked? Where is that written, that there are certain questions we can't ask?
To the mostly ridiculous.
The Passion of the Stern. Special appearance by Yucko the Clown.
We sort through them so you don't have to. Weekly on NPR's On the Media.
Saturday afternoons at 2 on KERA 90.1 Radio Unlimited.
I'm Marco Werman. Many immigrants in the United States talk about a sense of belonging. In Europe, many more complain that they will never belong. Some Europeans are asking if alienation is at the heart of Muslim extremism. That report and the latest from London on the next edition of The World.
This afternoon at 2 on KERA 90.1 Radio Unlimited.
You're listening to The Glenn Mitchell Show on KERA 90.1. Coming up tomorrow at 1 on the Motley Fool radio show, baseball marketer Mike Veeck stops by to talk about the time he drew 60,000 fans to the old Comiskey Park in Chicago and blew up a dumpster full of disco records. That's all coming up on the Motley Fool radio show, Saturday at 1 on KERA 90.1.
Welcome back. We're at the Dallas Public Library downtown. We're not in our usual spot. Over next to the books. We're in the auditorium across the breezeway. Come see us if you have time, or call us at 800-933-5372. Norm Hitzges, my guest. Again, he's usually plying his trade at the ticket, but today we're talking about the pleasures of travel. We have a full board of callers. We have people here who want to ask questions, but I want you to tell a story, and this goes to...
Hang on for a second. I want to answer that.
Sorry, the other two places.
Young lady,
You're right,
she
you're
won
right.
two other places. I'll just do these very quickly. There's a place in Tanzania called the Ngorongoro Crater. It's the Lost World. It used to be the tallest mountain in Africa. It was an incredibly violent volcano, and it blew itself up. So all that's left now is the caldera, the deep circular base of what used to be the volcano in the middle of the mountain range. It was taller than Kilimanjaro. In there now, with the way the wind and the rain and everything has worked it, no animals can get in, no animals can get out. It's a totally closed society. When the lions get a disease and it kills half the lions, zebras and wildebeests have a lot longer lives. When the lions start to come back, you'll notice a thinning out of the wildebeests and the zebras. Without the lions, the hyenas are a fearful bunch, baby. And so on. They got down to 2 black rhinos on a freshwater lake at the bottom. It's about a half-mile down at the bottom, where 20,000 pink flamingos call it home. It's an extraordinary place. If we all simply died today, 4 million years from now, the crater would be fine.
Okay, so this goes to how people, other places, look at us. A lot of Americans don't want to travel because they think there's going to be trouble and they don't like us over there. Would you tell the story about saying grace?
In Ngorongoro Crater, we were staying in tents. Now, I know that sounds roughing it to you, but these were called luxury tents. A term I never thought I'd hear in my life, by the way. Luxury tents. And we're being cared for by the Maasai, the warrior tribe of Africa, who have now understood that they have to work in tourism. And they're all Muslim. And it was a trip I'd put together. 16 of us went on the trip. And it was our custom to pray before meals. And I prayed at breakfast, and as we got up to head out to go on our game drive, one of the people there, I think his name was Alcantana, I believe his name, came over and said, "Sir, if it's all right with you, can I pray for you at lunch?" And that was just extraordinary. Just extraordinary.
And he did.
And he did. Yes, he did. We sat down in a very proud and loud voice. He prayed for us. It was really moving. It was really moving.
Why do you think some Americans, at least, are leery about overseas travel?
911 has made us all afraid. It's made us all afraid. We don't want to go places where we think we're unwelcome, and right now, a lot of people think we're unwelcome almost any place in the world. Not only that, we've taken on a lot more nationalistic feel, I believe, that, hey, if we're going to spend money, we're going to spend it here in America, that type of thing. We went 16 days to Africa, and doggone, we saw nothing. 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 I mean, we walked city streets. big city streets. Arusha is a town of over 1 million people by Kilimanjaro.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. People just wonderful to you. You know, if you go traveling and you go to find what's wrong with the other country, you can find it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if anybody comes to America and wants to find out what's wrong with America, they can find it. But I've been on some of these streets, and I've felt safer there than I felt in Detroit. Well, I'll be really honest with you.
You described your wife sort of striding off into some
Just
market.
off she went.
Yeah.
Into a marketplace alone. My wife on a teeming city street off in a marketplace alone. But she's remarkable. She understands that when you go traveling, you can trade things. She once traded her shoes. I swear to you. We were getting this giraffe, this wooden giraffe at a marketplace in Zimbabwe, and she was trying to bargain the price down. And the guy said, well, this much. No, not that much. And she's wonderful at bargaining. Until finally he said, how about your shoes? She was wearing tennies. She said, do you want my shoes? Yeah. She said, well, I'll tell you what. Say to that giraffe, I'll come back tomorrow, you can have my shoes, I'll have another pair on. Sure enough, that was the deal. That was the deal. Guy came down to like $30 or $40 American and her shoes. It's fantastic.
Norm Hitzges, my guest, the pleasures of travel, the topic. Let's get some calls, and we'll start with Eric in Richardson. Hi there.
Hi. Norm, I want to thank you for your input. I wanted to second your nomination of the South Island, New Zealand, as one of the most beautiful places. I've been there twice. Last Thanksgiving, my wife and I spent 4 days hiking the Milford Track.
Oh.
And that was beautiful. And from there, we went up and scuba dived the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So it was a good time. But what I really called up for, and I think you may have already answered it, is your favorite places in Africa, because Africa is really high on our list. And Mount Kilimanjaro is one of the items, but I was looking for other input.
I do Kilimanjaro and the Serengeti. You can do that on one trip. Botswana's probably another trip. The city of Cape Town is without question the most beautiful city I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Far and away. Been to London, been to Paris, been to all the United States cities, been to Sydney. The most beautiful city in the world I've ever been to is Cape Town. I spent 6 days in a city, and I never stay in cities because it's such a fantastic, fantastic place. Just a fantastic place.
Let's get a call next from Erica in Denton. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm originally from Brazil, and my husband and I, whenever we have breaks from school, and now we are both working, we go off in camping, we go off around the world in a very cheap way. And we went about a year ago to Malaysia, and then we went to Sarawak, island of Borneo, up north in Mulu. I would like to know if you have been there, or if you would like to go to Malaysia. And it was one of the best countries I've been in my life.
I've never been to that area in my life. I've never been there in my life.
Well, it's on the list now.
Yeah. By the way, caller, are you still there?
Hello.
Okay. She was from Brazil, and I'll be there in about 3 months. And by the way, one quick thing about Brazil: if you get to Brazil, everybody fears being carried off by mosquitoes on the Amazon. Okay. I mean, they're as big as sparrows. Okay. There are some rivers that run into the Amazon, the Rio Negro and the Guatemala, that are called blackwater rivers. The way I understand this is trees that grow along those rivers, when they drop their leaves into the rivers, those leaves then start to rot, basically, in the water. They make the water such a high pH in acidity that mosquitoes cannot breed. I went to the Amazon for 7 days. I used no repellent at all and had not a single mosquito bite in the Rio Negro. It was great.
Excellent.
The things you assume about places that aren't true.
From the audience. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
Norm, Rick Steves has done such a great job in producing materials to help us with travel in Europe. But what are your resources that you use for Africa, South America, Australia, the other parts of the world? Who's the Rick Steves of the rest of the world?
I'm very fortunate here, and if any of you ever want to comment here or call me for a contact, I'm fortunate to know David Frost, the South African golfer. Okay, we're not tight friends, but we're friends. And David said, "Why don't you come over to South Africa sometime? And if you do, stop by he's got a huge vineyard operation. He's a vintner outside of Cape Town." Well, he turned me on to a travel packager named Ian Kleinens, and his company is Fairfield, Fairfield, FairfieldTours.com. And he is just spectacular. And you can tell him, hey, I'm on a bit of a budget here, or I want to go first class here. He is an enormous packager with offices in Johannesburg and in Cape Town. And he knows I would say the entire bottom half of the continent he is expert in.
Let's talk about money.
All right.
As you say, you can either go super first class, or you can try and skate by. How do you skate by?
I don't think Americans have any understanding of how desperately the rest of the world needs our money. I'm serious. The rest of the world is starving, and the rates are just unbelievable in some of these places. You'll go to places and think, you can't be serious. We can get this for this much? Give you an example. You can go with a tour package. Those people package tours and charge you 14 days for $9,000 per person, double occupancy. Well, I sat there with South African Airways and my friend in South Africa and all the places we wanted to go in Tanzania and Zanzibar, and I said, let's design it, and we'll pay for it. These people know you're coming. They get the money. Bingo. 16 days from here to Joburg, to Kilimanjaro, and eventually on to Zanzibar, with all the game drives, all the fantastic places, being kept being kept awake at night by hippos in the middle of the night because they're just down the river. I mean, they're like 100 yards away. Fantastic experiences. Came out to a little less than $5,000 a person for 16 days. Serengeti, resort in Zanzibar, safety being met everywhere along the way. You felt wonderful. It is amazing if you'll look to stretch your money. And I'm not saying stay in a flea bag hotel. None of those. This was really nice. And it's amazing, Glenn, how little money you can take what will eventually be an incredible trip on.
Let's get some more calls, and we'll pick it up with Bill and Tyler. Hi.
Hi, how you doing today?
Fine.
I just wanted to suggest another place to visit that my family and I just came back from, and that's the Galapagos Islands.
Oh, I want to go there so badly.
The views are not near as majestic as the places you've talked about, but the exposure and contact with animals is unprecedented anywhere else in the world that I've been. So definitely put that on your list for the future.
That's definitely on my list. That place, the Pantanal, which is a wild area in the middle of South America, is on my list. Patagonia, at the deepest tip of South America, is on my list. Those are places, God willing, I'll get to.
You're a bit hobbled these days.
Yeah.
Is getting around tougher for you when you go someplace?
Last August, I went to cowboy camp. I called Air New Zealand and I said, what's the cheapest round trip you've got? And he said, man, do we have a round trip for you. Out of Los Angeles to Auckland, one flight within the country of New Zealand, and the return flight to L.A., $874. I said, that's for me, baby. Rented a car, that's expensive in New Zealand. Cars are expensive. Then went around, I got it all by myself. I made the trip. Went 13 days, scrambled up sides of mountains to get to glaciers. You can do it. You can do it. I don't get around so well right now, but there isn't any place that, I might not be able to do that Rockburn Walk or the Milford Track, but you can get to some unbelievable places.
You went from California to Auckland, round trip for $800?
I'll give you a quick story here. I know you're close to break.
Yeah,
quick story. After 11 days in New Zealand, I was really tired. I'd driven about a little over 2,000 miles in 8 days on the 11 days on the South Island of New Zealand. So I called Air New Zealand and I said, I'm going home Sunday, but I'm kind of tired now. Is there any way that I can get on the Friday flight? The guy looked and he said, I'm sorry, your fare is so low we can't switch it. So he said, you might go to one of our travel centers. Where are you? I said, Queenstown. He said, go to the travel center. I said, okay, go to the travel center. The girl looks at my record. She says, oh, Mr. Hitzges, I am so sorry. I can't do anything for you. She said, the fare you got was so low. Mm-hmm. And as I get up to go, this travel center with like 12 desks in it for Air New Zealand, she said, call customer service. I said, what? She said, call customer service. She didn't want everybody to hear. So I go out to a phone booth, call customer service. Craig answers. Remember his name. I tell him the story. He looks and he says, oh, Mr. Hitzges. Same story. He said, are you comfortable where you are? And I said, pardon me? He said, are you someplace where you're comfortable? I said, well, I'm in a phone booth in Queenstown. I guess I could stay there for a while. He said, can you wait 10 to 15 minutes? I said, yes, I could. And he comes back and he says, after 15 minutes, he said, you're all set. You got the Friday flight back to Los Angeles. I said, that's incredible. I said, now what do I owe you? And there was a pause. And in a voice that had 10% insult in it, he said, Mr. Hitzges, we're not going to charge you for this. I thought, these people have missed the fine art of gouging.
Uh-huh. Let's try to squeeze in a call before we have to take a break from Jean in Dallas. Hi.
Hi, I'm really excited about the opportunity, Norm, because my big question is I've been very fortunate to take 5 area study tours all over the world. I've been everywhere from China. I just got back from Southeast Asia, and I've done Brazil, you name it. Oh. And when you talk about how Americans are afraid to travel because they think they hate us, I mean, I was in Europe right after 9/11, and I sat across from Le Figaro, Le Monde, and they just told us they couldn't understand why Americans were so excited after 9/11, or not excited, but disappointed. But the point I'm trying to make is, or my question is, they really don't hate us. I mean, I've never been in a part of the world, and I've been in some remote parts where they truly hated us. They've got a reason to not be happy, but what their biggest challenge is that we don't want to come there, and when we get there, we're arrogant. So,
this young lady just made a point. If you're going to travel, go there with the idea you're going to try to understand the people you're going to meet. Mm-hmm. Go there with an idea of, hey, I know 10 French phrases. How much French do you speak, sir? Un petit. I know that one. Ouvrez la fenêtre. Open the window. You know, if you'll just try, that's all. It is amazing how quickly people will warm to you. If you just say to them, hey, I'm not looking to see what's wrong. I'm not here to try to tell you, oh, we got it better in America. Mm-hmm. I'm here because, you know what? I heard New Zealand's an unbelievable place. Mm-hmm. And if you go with that attitude, I don't recall a single problem I've ever had traveling. If
you want to talk with Norm Hitzges, we're at 800-933-5372. We're at the Dallas Public Library downtown. If you want to ask a question here, just raise your hand. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Support for KERA comes from you, our members, and from D Magazine, presenting the Best of the City issue at a celebration of the Best of Big D on Wednesday, July 20th at Gillies, Texas. Ticket proceeds benefit Texas Scottish Rite Hospital for Children. Ticket information at dmagazine.com.
Hi, I'm Mary Louise Kelly from NPR News. Saturday morning is my favorite time to put my feet up and enjoy a cup of coffee and public radio. Public radio on the weekends. News, views, and all the special extras you have time for on the 6th and 7th days of the week. I'll be tuning in. Hope you will too. Public radio on the weekend. It's the news and so much more.
I'm Ed Gordon. Later today on News and Notes, thousands of Zimbabweans have been left homeless by a government program to fight crime. Opposition groups have cried foul. We'll explore the turmoil in Zimbabwe later today on News and Notes from NPR News.
Tonight at 8 on KERA 90.1, Radio Unlimited.
listening to The Glenn Mitchell Show on KERA 90.1. Coming up in 18 minutes on The World, many immigrants in the U.S. talk about a sense of belonging. In Europe, however, many more complain that they'll never belong. Some Europeans are asking if alienation is at the heart of Muslim extremism. We'll get that report and the latest from London coming up in just 18 minutes on The World. We have a 30% chance of rain through Saturday. Today's high should be around 95 degrees. And overnight, lows right around 75. Then on Saturday, expect highs of 93. Currently, it's 94 in Wichita Falls, 88 in Dallas.
Welcome back. Norm Hitzges, my guest. In real life, he does a show on the Ticket every morning from 10 until noon. He's headed for Oxnard for Cowboys training camp in a couple of weeks, but we've spirited him away for at least an hour today to talk about the pleasures of travel. If you want to talk with him, 800-933-5372. And we also have a question right here at the library. Hi.
I've traveled extensively in Eastern and Western Europe, Greece, and Turkey, and we've already touched on the subject of anti-American sentiment. And what I've noticed is that it's not really anti-American sentiment, but rather a contempt for American governmental hubris. Would you say that you have noticed this difference?
And by the way, there's a similar contempt for in a lot of Muslim countries for the people who did that to us. In talking with a lot of people in Tanzania, for instance, they couldn't believe they did that. They said, hey, you can have your differences, but that's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. And you're right. It is not a dislike of Americans. It is a dislike of perceived differences with our government and what it's done. Now, if you travel, I wouldn't wear your red, white, and blue chic American flag faux slacks or whatever, okay? And I wouldn't take big diamond rings or big earrings. Hey, what are you going to do with a diamond ring in the Serengeti? You're going to lose it. That's the only thing you can do. Leave it home. Leave it home. And it's wonderful.
Special moments?
If you're going to Africa and you want to go on a photo safari, make sure you go to a private reserve. You don't want to go to a public park like Kruger. Kruger's nice to get to, the largest national reserve in the world. It's nice to get to. But you want to go to a private area to stay, because those people can go any place on their land. Where at Kruger, you've got to stay on the roads in Kruger. But to the west of Kruger, 7 enormous landowners. By enormous, I mean 440,000 square acres. That's a lot of land. 7 of these people got together. Richard Branson, by the way, is one of them, Virgin Airlines. And they dedicated all their areas, all 7 of their pieces of land that touch Kruger, to being private areas where they've put campsites. I don't mean campsites like roasting a marshmallow. I mean really air-conditioned cabins, beautifully tailored, wonderful guides. But you can go anywhere there. You can go anywhere. You take it down the road, you see something, you can go right into the jungle. The last day we were at in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, it was just 4 of us in the vehicle. Vehicles hold no more than 8, by the way, and they're tiered like theater seating. And the guide said, leopard, leopard. And I thought, I can't see leopard. What's a leopard track? And he says, there. And I said, show me why. And he said, look at how the blades of grass have turned. Something's gone through there. And I thought, wow, this guy's good. We go into this jungle, and we find a leopard just out for a nice, relaxed walk, a male leopard. And we follow at a distance, and we lose him. And the guide goes a little further, and he stops, and he says, okay, we're going to sit right here to see if he reappears. And if he doesn't, we're going to go back over there, because the land runs that way, and he may be following the curvature of the land to find him over there. We sit for 3 or 4 minutes, no leopard, and he says, okay, let's go. And you've got no sides and no top on this vehicle. It's open air, okay? No sides, no top. And we all have to help in backing up, because you don't want to back up over these things called leadwood trees, okay? Because they'll blow out your tires like. And as I look down to help him back up, the leopard is about maybe 8 feet from me. He's sitting under a bush, a nice cool spot. He's not up. He's sitting on his buns, and his legs are up, and he's just looking at me. And I said to the guy, and he said, no, let's just sit here and enjoy something that hardly anybody on the face of the earth ever gets to enjoy. And I had the camera passed down to me, and I just started snapping photos. I have this spectacular picture of this leopard looking through the reeds of grass right at me from about 8 feet. The other one I'll tell you is there's a restaurant. Everybody's got a restaurant someplace. Sure. Restaurant in Switzerland called The Blind Cow. Great name. Belinda Koo, The Blind Cow. Was headed for Switzerland, called 6 months in advance. Can we get reservations? No, sir, we're sold out.
6 months at the restaurant?
Yes, sir, we're sold out. Keep checking with us. 5 months. Sorry, no cancellations. 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, 1 week. Sorry, sir, no cancellations. When you get to Zurich, call us to see if we've had any cancellations that day. Sometimes that happens. No. Okay, would you like to come in and just have a drink in our bar, and then if somebody doesn't show up, you can have the table? Sure. You get to the Blind Cow, you say, here I am, and the person at the front, the receptionist, pushes a button and says, Hitzges party for the bar. Out through a series of switchback black curtains comes a blind person. And the blind person says, put your hands on my shoulder and form a line. This blind person then leads you through these curtains and into a room where there is no light. No light. Not a pinhole of light. If you have a watch that glows, please take it off, sir. Does your pager light up? Please take it off, sir. Please turn your phone off. You go into a room where there may be 20 or 25 tables of people eating dinner. It is absolutely dark. There are only 2 sighted people who work for this restaurant. Everyone else is sightless. The bartender, I said, could I have a glass of Merlot? Sure. So I said, do you mind if we ask questions? No, sir. It was a woman. I said, you've memorized your bar, haven't you? She said, yes. I said, how many bottles you got back there? She said, about 90. I said, what kind of Merlot do you have? She said, what kind of Merlot do you want? I said, well, what do you think? She said, well, I think the Jordan. Jordan's very good. I said, you can make all drinks? She said, name it. Long Island iced tea, Randy Alexander. How do you want your martini? And this place is extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. Never got to sit, but the way they serve dinner is beef, chicken, or fish, all bones taken out, vegetables brought right to your table. They point out they have no knives. Everything's cut for you and everything like that. I want no knives in here. And I said to the girl, do you serve peas? And she said, do you serve us peas? I love the answer.
Let's, I'm going to write that one down. I plan to go there one day. Back to the phones. And Michael in Dallas. Hi, you're on with Norm Hitzges.
Norm and Glenn, hello. Hi. I had a chance to hear the story about the tennis shoes, having traveled once to Africa and wanted to see what rate I could negotiate for tennis lessons while I was there. And the guy says, well, I'll take your shoes. And I said, for what? He said, for the lesson.
Yeah.
I said, for how long? He said, for however long you're here, a week, 2 weeks, whatever time you're here. When we finish, just let me have your shoes. I don't have those shoes. They look like nice tennis shoes.
It is amazing.
I had an entire week of tennis lessons for a pair of tennis shoes. But I have a question. The question. I was also traveling once and heard 2 passengers discussing joining the Club of 100. Have you heard of a club where people who travel to at least 100 countries join this Club of 100?
No.
Sounds like Norm's a candidate.
I want to add one more place to stay.
Yeah, sure.
If you ever get a chance to go to Machu Picchu in Peru, it is awesome. That's the Incan fortress in the sky. They built it at 8,000 or 9,000 feet in the mountains, at the top of the mountains. They built an entire city with thousands of people. They terraced the entire sides of the mountain, knowing what level of the mountain to grow their peas on, their corn on, their beans on, their tomatoes on.